Afghanistan, the so-called graveyard of empires, has seen many invaders. Many countries have tried to invade and fight with Afghans in last centuries. And don't get me wrong, Afghans were successfully invaded and captured and converted by many empires too. Many Indo-Greek empires have established in Afghanistan, like India's Mauryan and Kushan Empire, Iran's Sasanian, and few Central Asian empires. But all of these empires came and went away. Unlike great civilizations like Indian, Chinese, and Egyptian, Afghanistan was not able to absorb and sustain an empire and its culture. That's why Afghanistan is such a volatile territory. But in today's video, we will be only talking about the Cold War history of Afghanistan and US invasion of Afghanistan. The story starts from 1979 when Soviet forces invaded Afghanistan to save the Soviet-backed government against American and Pakistani. We must also not forget that this was the era of Sino-Soviet split, so Soviets had to fight against Maoist insurgents too. The war was long and bloody. Over millions of Afghanis and thousands of Soviets died. US and Pakistani-backed militia known as Mujahideen fought against Soviet forces and finally pushed them back to Soviet Union. USSR was having internal issues in late 80s, which included financial problems which eventually forced Soviet to sign a Geneva Accord with USA. Subsequently, in 1991, USSR fell. After all this mess, Afghanistan's government fell right after fall of Soviet Union and was replaced by Taliban government. Taliban was made up of same militia funded by US and Pakistan to fight against Soviets. In 2001, US invaded Afghanistan after the terrorist attack of 9/11 in search of Osama bin Laden, hiding in caves of Tora Bora protected by Taliban. Now we all know what happened after that. US kept looking for Osama bin Laden for over a decade and ended up finding him in Pakistan. Still, the war continued. Now it was against ISIS and Taliban. And after all this mess for 20 years, we are here. US withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, US withdrawal from Afghanistan is a total chaotic mishmash. So yes, what really went wrong? We will not talk about the nitty-gritties of this 20-year-old war, but we will talk about how US was supposed to leave Afghanistan, were its goals met, and what actually happened and can it be resolved. When we talk about how US was supposed to leave Afghanistan, we must watch what President Biden expected to happen when US troops leave Afghanistan.
Together with our NATO allies and partners, we have trained and equipped over nearly 300,000 current serving members of the military, the Afghan National Security Force, and many beyond that who are no longer serving. Add to that, hundreds of thousands more Afghan National Defense and Security Forces trained over the last 2 decades. We provided our Afghan partners with all the tools, let me emphasize, all the tools, training, and equipment of any modern military. We provided advanced weaponry, and we're going to continue to provide funding and equipment, and will ensure they have the capacity to maintain their Air Force. But most critically, as I stressed in my meeting just 2 weeks ago with President Ghani and Chairman Abdullah, Afghan leaders have to come together and drive toward a future that the Afghan people want and they deserve.
America expected 300,000 Afghan troops to effectively fight against Taliban and repel them. Well, that didn't really happen. Despite of the fact that Afghan troops were well equipped and even had an air force to rely upon, Afghan troops could not fight against Taliban. So what could be the reason behind it? US spent over $83 billion to train Afghan troops. Afghan troops were never trained in the manner they should have. Even in 2021, the leadership of Afghani army was very underprepared, unqualified, and not competent enough to lead a huge army. And it's not because of US didn't train Afghan troops well, but the blame mostly goes to the so-called army of Afghanistan. We must understand that in order to have a strong and motivated army and ordered military, a nation should have a strategic and military culture. And Afghanistan never had. Afghanistan's military was riddled with corruption, unprofessionalism, and so on. The superficial physical training of Afghanistani soldier was irrelevant. So what could US have done to fix this problem? Virtually nothing. A foreign nation cannot build and motivate a nation's military to fight for their own homeland. It comes from within. So I think US essentially did all it could, maybe not enough, but still very substantial. Now, did the goals that US set for itself met? Well, that's a very subjective question. Goals were met in some way and didn't met in some other. The primary goal that US had in 2001 was to exterminate Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan and kill Osama bin Laden. Now, both the goals were mostly met, although goals of Operation Freedom Sentinel were not met. But we have to understand that even superpowers have limit. For many people, it's US running away from Afghanistan, which might be correct. But it must be understood that there is no way people can expect US to build a country. In a way, US did try to rebuild Afghanistan, and other countries like India also invested in Afghanistan's infrastructure. But in the end, only natives can eventually build their own countries. Now let's talk about what has actually happened in Afghanistan and what is going on. And can US and other countries can still resolve the problem? So after US troops started evacuating from main territories in Afghanistan, Taliban started regaining control very fast. And in just 1 month, Taliban gained almost everything they lost in the last 20 years. People of Afghanistan are trying to flee the country left and right and falling off from strategic airlifters from the sky. In few more days, US troops will leave Afghanistan in totality. So is there anything US and allies can do? US is giving immigration visas to eligible Afghanistani citizens, and US and allies are also giving refuge to thousands of Afghanistani citizens. But this isn't going to have a strategic implication on overall Afghanistan's problem. We must understand that withdrawal of US troops will have lots of consequences for the neighboring countries as well, and maybe even US. US might resort to some remote airstrikes, which will again not really help in long term. US allies are not willing to pour any more blood and money in this conflict, and regional powers like India, China, Pakistan, and Iran all have their own issues and interests in Afghanistan, which might not coincide with US interests. So, the future of Afghanistan and its politics seems to again revolve around Taliban. There might be a reforming of northern alliances, and there might be some resistance against Taliban in future. And since the political leaders like Ashraf Ghani have already left the country, there is not gonna be any democratic solution to the Afghan problem. All we can hope is that Taliban does not become the autocratic and injustice regime it was pre-US invasion of Afghanistan. Thank you for watching this video. Spearhead over and out.